a good day. So, for today's video, we're gonna travel back to the Rankin and Bass Christmas universe. Well, technically, we're gonna travel to an alternate reality of the Rankin and Bass Christmas universe when we talk about the life and adventures of Santa Claus. So, alright, let's go.
Yeah! So, we start off an age ago in that classic Christmas location, the Forrest of Burzee. Is that near the island of Misfit Toys or something? Regardless, in this Forrest of Burzee, we meet Tingler the Imp, and he is informing the Great Ack that the leaders of the Immortals have assembled for his requested meeting. But why have they been summoned? What is the purpose? Well, you see, the Great Ack needs their help. He wishes to bestow immortality upon the mortal known as Santa Claus. And he needs all the leaders to agree to that plan in order for it to happen. His reasons are that, Santa Claus is so beloved around the entire planet, and that he does so many good deeds and brings so much joy to so many people. Like, if that's not worthy of immortality, I don't know what is. Also, time is of the essence, because Santa Claus is actually quite old, and this Christmas season ride of delivering gifts will be his last, because soon he will be visited by death. I'm sorry, what? We're talking about the death of Santa Claus here? Holy crap, this kids show hasn't even begun yet, and it's already super grim. Ugh! But even with all of that, the leaders of the Immortals are not quite convinced with the Great Act to give someone immortality. These leaders, they don't hand out immortality like humans hand out candy at Halloween, In fact, these Immortals have never handed out immortality to anyone. Like, geez, for it to happen the first time, that mortal would have to be super-duper, fantastic, insanely amazing for it to happen. So they are not so sure about this, Santa. So the Great Act decides to take them through a tiptoe through the time tulips and regale them with the life and adventures of Santa Claus, and to make them believers. And so, way back in the day, we find the Great Ack, who has found an abandoned human baby in the forest. Which is quite peculiar, because there's really no abandoned babies in this forest. Also, humans don't really travel to this forest either. So he decides to give the baby to the lioness, Shiegra, and oh my god, that is such a horrible ending to this show. Oh, no, wait, no it's not. Usually it would be, but this time, instead, the Great Ack informs Shiegra to protect this baby, keep it warm, give it milk if it needs to, I'm not even kidding. But the imp, Nasil, has never seen a baby before, let alone a human baby, and she has become completely smitten with this little creature. So she decides to become this baby's forest foster mother, which should prove to be pretty interesting seeing as she's never seen a baby before, and what they want and what they need, and don't even get me started on the terrible twos, This could be disastrously entertaining. So Nasil names this baby Claus, which in forest language means little one. Through the passage of time, little one grows up to become young man in the Forest of Burzee, with all of the imps and nymphs and creatures and whatnot. Kind of like Tarzan in the jungle with the apes, but this time it's a lot more whimsical and fancy. Now that Claus is old enough, the Great Act decides to show this mortal the mortal world outside of the forest, which he does by flying him to other parts of the world through the vacuum of space, kind of like Nuclear Man did in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, but I digress. And it's not as fun of a field trip as you might imagine. This mortal world is not as fantastic as the Forest of Burzee. Worse yet, this mortal world is really cruel to all the children. Whether these kids are forced to beg for food or clothes or whatever, they're forced to work to the bone for table scraps, they're forced to learn how to fight, like they don't have any kind of a childhood at all. So with that, Claus is deeply concerned. And he decides that he wants to help humanity. So he leaves the Forest of Burzee and departs to the realm of the mortals, along with Tingler, I guess for companionship, and Shiegra for her protection and for her tasty, tasty milk. They wind up in a snow-filled region called the Laughing Valley of Ho-Ha-Ho, where they get the imps to make them a fancy castle. So living in this region, is pretty fantastic as is, but Claus, he goes out of his way to help the children in the neighboring areas in any way he can, right? He'll read them books, he'll put them in a toboggan and throw them down a hill. He'll just be a really great role model and a really good friend to all of these kids as he becomes a middle-aged man. Suddenly, an orphan child named Wickham is found frozen on Claus's doorstep, and of course, Claus is gonna help this kid. He nurses him back to health, and he gives this kid a new invention. An invention that he calls a toy. A toy that's in the shape of Claus's cat, Blinky, but still, like Wickham is just like, holy crap, this thing is so awesome! He shows all of his friends at his orphanage, and next thing you know, they all want a new toy thing, for themselves. Claus can only make so many toys so fast, right? So he goes to the forest and gets the Ryls, the elves, and the wood nymphs to help him out making more toys. So the kids are happy, Claus and his friends are happy, everyone is happy. Well, not everyone. The king of the Aguas, and I guess by extension the Aguas, are not happy at all. The Aguas wants to control children to do bad things for them, like steal, to be rude, for general disobedience and all these other kind of things. And they can't be doing all of these horrible things if they're having fun with toys. So they send a threat through Claus's window. Oh, and I guess I should mention, these Aguas can turn invisible and walk through walls, so instantly, quickly, all of Claus's toys have been stolen and the children get nothing. Sad times indeed. So the great Ack, he hears about this and he is not too happy at all. He calls out King Aguas to tell him to stop hurting his boy's feelings. The Aguas don't care to listen, and the great Ack has no power in the Valley of Hee-Ho-Ha. The great Ack, he don't like that. So in that case, it is war. The Aguas send forth all of their most deadly creatures to destroy the woodland creatures, but all of these evil creatures have been destroyed. The Aguas know a losing battle when they see it, so they try to flee. But the great Ack chases after them with his silver axe. He's doing what now? He's chasing after them with an axe. Holy crap! He wouldn't really do anything with that, right? He's just scaring them off, right? Well, as the great Ack tells Claus, he's free to deliver his gifts because the Aguas have perished. Oh my god! So Claus starts to deliver these gifts to the children. But his sleigh is overfilled, and there's not much he can do to move it. So Peter Nook, he gets some forest reindeer to pull Santa's big sleigh. And of course, these are forest reindeer, so of course they're magical, and of course they can fly. So Claus goes into town. It's at night, and all the doors are locked, so it's like, well, I guess we're gonna have to go home. Or we can break and enter these houses, hey? To which he does! But thankfully, he doesn't take anything, he just leaves a whole bunch of toys for the kids. And so Claus has been delivering gifts to all these kids on Christmas ever since. Meanwhile, back in the present, no pun intended, Santa's last ride has happened, and his time is running short. But thankfully, the great Ack has convinced the commander of the wind demons to... The commander of the wind demons? Wow, you don't get more Christmassy than a guy with that name. Like, this still is a Christmas special, right? Anywho, this commander is fully convinced by the great act about how fantastic Santa Claus is, and agrees that he should become immortal. With this wind demon guy, seconding the motion, all of the other leaders of the immortals agree. And that very night, they bestow immortality upon Santa. So Christmas is saved! Hooray! Santa keeps the form that he has, as an older man with a great big full white beard, and not as a younger version of himself like Anakin Skywalker did in the remastered version of Return of the Jedi, but still, the dude's immortal now, so you really can't complain. And I guess, well, abruptly, that's the end of the story. So with that, that's the end of this, fantastic tale.
Yeah, so I was a little harsh on this one, but it's all in good fun. It's all in good fun. If I am being truthful, though, like when I was a kid, I really didn't actually like this Christmas special. I had a hard time getting into it. I think the main reason for me was because I really liked the original version of Santa Claus in these Rankin and Bass stories. And with those, we already had an origin story for Santa. So suddenly we have two origin stories for one character? Don't get me wrong, I like fantasy stories and stuff like that. But this Christmas special was just a little too different than the other ones, and I preferred the other ones, so this one, I didn't really watch a whole lot. It also doesn't have that same comedy vibe as the other Rankin Bass Christmas specials. This one does have some pretty fantastic songs, I'll give them that. But, watching this special now, I actually really do appreciate it. There are so many different stories about Santa Claus and how he came to be from different, movies or books or TV shows or whatever. Heck, even around the world, there's so many different versions of Santa. Some people call him Father Christmas, or Sinterklaas, or Saint Nick, or Grandfather Christmas, or whatever. There's always been different Santas, so this special, kind of flows with that, so it's all good. And the main thing with all of these different stories is that at the heart of it, Santa Claus is Santa Claus. He has a great big heart, he wants to help everybody out, he builds a lot of toys, he tries to make Christmas special for everybody. So it doesn't matter what kind of different setting Santa's in or what different clothes he wears, at the end of it, Santa is Santa. Just slightly different ways of how we got to him there, so it's all hip. Also, quick little fun fact, you can indeed drink lion's milk and people around the world do drink it. It's just so less plentiful than cow's milk, so it's not really that readily available. Just in case you were wondering. But yes, if you haven't seen this Christmas special before, I suggest you do. But with that, we do have some more behind the scenes kind of things about Santa Claus, about this story, about other things, and we'll get into that going on over here.
So yes, hey, Santa from Burzee. So this Christmas special is not part of the main Rankin and Bass Christmas universe. Nay. It is, as I say, an alternate reality, the Christmas multiverse. So how did we get to this other Santa Claus origin story? Well, as we know with Rankin and Bass Christmas specials, the majority of them are based on a popular Christmas song, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, or Frosty the Snowman, or even Nestor the Long-Eared Donkey, all of them quite fantastic. But there have been some Rankin Bass Christmas specials that were based on older books, such as Pinocchio, if you just add some Christmas elements to it. Also, The Year Without a Santa Claus, and of course, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And with that, indeed, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was first a book that was published in 1902. It was one of the first stories to really delve into the origin of Santa Claus, from when he was a baby to a senior citizen and beyond. This book really explained every different aspect of Santa Claus and his powers and abilities and how they all came to be. And this book was written by L. Frank Baum. If that name doesn't sound familiar, a lot of his works will be familiar to you. he is most famously known for writing the whole world involving the Wonderful Wizard of Oz and every Oz book that came after it. So Frank is pretty used to writing stories in some fantastical, whimsical land, like the Land of Oz, Munchkin Land, or even in his other books, like Maryland, in the story Dot and Tot in Maryland, So for his Christmas book to be placed in the fantasy Forest of Burzee, also in the Valley of Ho-Ha-Ho, stuff like that, it's absolutely in his wheelhouse to write stories like this. And you can actually really appreciate the story more knowing who it came from and, what his specialty in writing is. At least for me, anyway. So this Christmas special, as fantastic as it is, for the most part is pretty on par with the book. Of course, some changes will be made from the book. This special is only an hour long, You can only fit so many things in there. So while the bulk of it is pretty much the same with the book, there are some differences. For example, in the book, there is no Tingler the Elf. Which seems kind of funny, right? He is a pretty important character in the story, and he seems to fit in pretty well. But he was created for the Christmas special, mostly to help move the story along quicker and have Santa Claus to get to his conclusions a lot faster than he did in the book. Also, Claus did meet up with Jack Frost on a couple of occasions. It actually would have been pretty cool to see Jack Frost in there. Maybe Jack being a stand-in for Tingler, but, it is what it is. Also, in the book, Shiegra could talk to Claus. I guess it's depicted as talking human language to each other, but, they could have communicated in other different ways. But still, they communicated. Not so much in the Christmas special. Also, with the leaders of the Immortals meeting for that, meeting, that only happened at the end of the book, not originally at the beginning, kind of setting up basically a whole flashback story. Although that's kind of a small point, We just don't see those characters as much in the book. For the darker parts of the story, the Aguas being defeated, in the special, the Great Act did say the Aguas have perished. We did not see how or why in the special, but in the book, indeed we did. The forest nymphs, using their magical powers, turned the Aguas into clods of dirt. Small little hills. So indeed, they did perish. And that probably would have been a bit much to show children in this special. So instead, they just showed them running away. In the book, Claus only had 2 deer pulling his sleigh. They were known as Glossy and Flossie. And of course, yes, they could talk as well. Whereas in the special, we see Santa using 8 reindeer, which is more of a nod to modern Santa Claus, with Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and all them. A small point still, but in the book, Flossie and Glossy were a bit more important characters. And for one last point, in the book, the story continued after Claus got his immortality. Not a whole much longer, but there was still another chapter. It was basically talking how Santa Claus deals with more modern amenities, such as modern homes not having a big fireplace and a bigger chimney for him to crawl down into. These newer houses having a really smaller stove, and even smaller stove pipes, making it almost impossible for him to crawl down it. But we find that the fairies and the wood nymphs do have the power to walk through walls, so they wound up being the people who were delivering the gifts inside the house. Where Santa just chilled in the sleigh, and just kind of drove it around. But, like I say, this book was one of the first books to really delve into Santa's origin, and with that, it became a very, very popular Christmas book. So, for it to be turned into a Christmas special, it just makes total sense. But speaking of Santa origin stories, the other origin story in the Rankin and Bass universe, with Claus being raised by the Kringles in Santa Claus is Coming to Town, was definitely written well after the life and adventures of Santa Claus. So I guess you can say Santa Claus is Coming to Town would have been more influenced by the life and adventures of Santa Claus. There are some similarities between the two. Both stories feature a baby Claus that was abandoned and found in a forest at some point, and was raised by non-human characters. Both of these Clauses grow up in the customs of their adoptive parents, and even with the animals of the forest. Both were raised by an adoptive mother. Both have a villain not wanting toys to be delivered to town, where they both get defeated one way or another. and both have a powerful older-looking man as a magical mentor and protector. So as fantastic as the book is spawning this Christmas special, there were other adaptations of the book. So the book is pretty fantastic, the special has become legendary, and they both have helped propel the story into the modern times and into the future. So hooray for them! But other than that, that's pretty much all I have on this, for the basics of the story, the similarities with the special in the book, and all of the whatnot with it. So with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess that's that. Also, if you're interested, I created my own comic book channel, 215 Comics. And currently, I have created my own cartoon series, The Adventures of the Density. And recently started a radio series featuring my newest character, Elastoma, with more titles to come. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link up top here to that channel and some links at the end of the video. Yay! Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.